So this is a podcast I didn't necessarily want to make, but I feel it's important. And if you're new to the show, you'll probably want to listen to another podcast, interview style podcast, because this one is going to be a little self-indulgent, and I actually feel kind of strange even making it because I just notice how much it's about me and talking about myself. But I feel for those of you who are interested, kind of on the journey I've been, a lot of people come to me curious about what I'm up to, how I got doing what I do, and where things are going. And I wanted to tell on myself in this podcast and bring a bit more authenticity in a world that is devoid of authenticity. There's so much conversation about authenticity in the world, but there's little actual authenticity happening. And I've been going through somewhat of a crisis awakening, something I'll call a descent to soul. That's some language I have for it now. It's just been incredibly painful. And what it's awakened me to is just how superficial our whole lives are, and including the life that I've built. And so I actually recorded this podcast last week in nature, sitting outside, and I really enjoyed the setting. However, the content was lacking, and I realized that it's really hard for me to formulate all of this off the cuff. And so I've written really a lot of what I want to say today. So if you're watching this on YouTube or anywhere else, you're going to see me looking down a lot. And for those of you that are listening, I'm going to be reading a bit just off my device here to help me, and then filling in some of the blanks. So like I said, if you're new here, welcome to the podcast, or welcome to the YouTube channel. I don't know how long this tangent is going to take, but my hope here is to share a little bit about kind of what I've been going through, the shifts that my life is taking, both personally and professionally, where I'm thinking of taking things, and just sharing some shit that I feel like I really need to get off my chest, because I feel like I've been living out of integrity and living a lie. So yeah, for the last couple of years, my life has been falling apart, really. It's like everything in my world has been turned upside down. The things that I believed in, all these gifts that I put years into honing my identities, my roles, and all these things that I was actually really proud and excited to identify with: relationships, job titles, friendships, desires, opinions, all of these things that I worked really hard to achieve. The last number of years, people have always told me, damn, dude, you're so young for what you're giving in the world. You're so young for the gifts that you're able to give, for what you're up to in the world. And there's so much amazement around all of that. And although, I really took that egoically, and I took that to heart, like, fuck yeah, dude. Like, I remember almost always being the youngest person in any type of leadership development, any type of retreat organization that I was involved in. I was almost always in the top, 1 or 2, 3 people that were youngest in anything I did. So I felt like kind of egoically that I was ahead of everybody, that I was way deeper on my path, and I was going to achieve these amazing things by the time I'm 40, because look at me, I'm 26, 27, doing this work with a bunch of 40-year-olds who, honestly, I felt like I could run circles around in terms of depth. And that sounds super conceited and arrogant, and because it was, and it is. And I realized how adolescent I was. And so all of these identities, all these things that I've worked so hard in my life to hone and to build, as of recently, have just begin dissolving, like not in my own accord, right? It's just happening, right? And over these past, especially the last 6 years, like I said, everyone around me, including myself, agreed that I was accelerating towards this beautiful destination, this beautiful place in life, right? I had this promising vocation as a transformational leader. I had this possibility to really make an impact in the world. Everybody was telling me how much of an incredible teacher I am, how impactful I was, how I was going to change the way things were done in a lot of these spaces that I entered. Like, just nothing but, not, of course, reflected my shadows, but for the most part, people just projecting a lot of other stuff on me. And with that came a lot of jealousy and a lot of other stuff I'm going to get into. But it's kind of funny because I spent these 5 years really intensely working my ass off, studying with a few different teachers, primarily John Wineland, learning the art of embodiment, of masculine and feminine polarity. It gave me opportunities to teach hundreds of people, to facilitate groups. I worked with an incredible coach development team, Adam and Bay Quiney. I did a ton of personal work, of which I talked about a lot in this podcast. And I felt like I was on top of my game. And so after putting many years into these trainings with John, it was many hours, thousands and thousands of hours. In fact, I was one of the first people to graduate from his 1,000-hour teacher training program, just putting my heart and soul into that. It was something like 24 retreats I went on. I was giving everything online, helping with the groups, like everything that I could give to that organization I gave. And just last year, I felt like I was finally ready to just step away from all that and break out on my own and just really start to carve my own path and kind of get out of the shadow of that organization and of that teacher and of all my teachers. And so I let go of all my containers and all teachers. And at that time, I felt like I had found my purpose, that I found what I was destined to do for the rest of my life, right? Like finally stepping out on my own, finally kind of expanding my wings, so to speak, and really just claiming what I was destined here to do, or what I thought. And despite all the confirmations around me of everybody being so excited and myself, how excited and grateful I should be for finally finding a purpose at such a young age and on the trajectory to do all this amazing work, the truth is like over the course of the following months, I want to say this is in like 2022, I started to just touch on this profound emptiness within myself. All right, like I just found there was so much time I was spending just in immense angst and grief and fear and pain. And I started to get in touch with this really deep, kind of unspeakable longing. All right, and it really did start like kind of in those last 6 months of training with John. And I remember being at some retreats, people there who are allegedly very deep and intuitive and all that kind of stuff. And I say allegedly because I mean that. And no shots to those people. I'm just learning a lot about intuition and what it really means to live a life of depth. All these people tried to name what I was going through. Oh, it's trauma. Oh, it's because of the difficulties you're going through in your relationship. I even had people at these retreats try to give me energetic clearings to rid my bodies of maybe foreign entities, foreign energies that I had picked up because I was really in a destitute place. I remember this one particular retreat where in Shasta, Mount Shasta with John, and my body wouldn't stop shaking and convulsing. Like I was shaking, my legs were bouncing. Usually I'm a pretty still dude. I couldn't sleep. I was shaking all night and I was like bouncing my leg while we were in a seminar, like while we were in a session with him. I couldn't even sit still. I had to leave the room. I kind of had this like explosive energy move through me and I was pulsing, and just at night I was in bed. I was purging. I was crying. I was panicking. I was just kind of freaking out. I felt like I was losing my mind. And like I said, everybody around me had their opinion of what they thought was happening. And despite that, I knew it wasn't trauma. I knew it wasn't a trauma response. I knew that what I was feeling was a territory psychologically and spiritually that I'd actually never entered before. I'd felt trauma before, and this wasn't a trauma response. This was a pain, like a grief, a longing, so much more ancient than like childhood, so much more existential than I could even put into words. And being a pretty open book with most people, I started to feel like pathologized. Like everyone had an idea of what I should do. My relationship, my partner said, you need to go to therapy. This is trauma. And because everybody had an opinion around me, I just stopped sharing, because I knew that these people didn't understand of the territory that I was in, psycho-spiritually. There was something happening within me, deep within me, that was causing just a lot of dysregulation and upset that wasn't typical. Like you wouldn't find it in the DSM or you wouldn't find it. It's not a nervous system breath work antidote or like some somatic therapy that was gonna, like, I just knew intuitively. I knew deep in my soul there was something else going on. And so I wrapped up that year with John and went out on my own and was feeling this like constant deep pain just in my beingness. And shortly after that kind of all wrapped up and I had that really difficult retreat where my body was doing all these wild things, I went on this 28-day minimalist survival course with an organization called Boulder Outdoor Survival School. That was in the backcountry of southern Utah, and this was September 2022. Stick with me. If you're like wondering where I'm going with this story, I want to kind of give some context, and maybe I should have prefaced that upon the beginning of this podcast, but I want to give some context about kind of where I was at and what's been leading up to ultimately what is a massive shift in my life, and how I really believe like what I'm going through right now is just changing the trajectory of everything that I do and possibly changing just me fundamentally, who I am forever. So I went on this 28-day minimalist survival course, and I've made a recording on this. Maybe I should upload it as a podcast, but on YouTube you can find kind of a conversation I had about after this experience. It was absolutely life-changing. You know, I spent an entire month sleeping under the stars, no access to any modern amenities. I didn't have tents, I didn't have a sleeping bag, I didn't have flashlights, I had just basic kind of provisions. Really, really basic kind of gear that I could all fit and roll up in a blanket, and just lived off the land for 28 days, slaughtered an animal and used every part of its body. I learned how to navigate and traverse up from 11,500 feet down to the desert floor through southern Utah. So I had always been someone that felt deeply connected to nature, felt deeply kind of, I had a lot of experiences in nature when I was young that were really beautiful and profound, and I had a healthy enjoyment and love for the natural world. I felt always in touch with the wild indigenous one, you could call it, within. There was always a bit of wildness to me. So this trip, I fell in love. I was ecstatic not every moment. There was some hard moments, but 90% of the trip, I was just over the moon with living in communion with the land. But there was something particular on this trip that I now know or can call that happened. There was what Bill Plotkin, who I've been working with, and I'm going to get more into this subject later, this whole idea of descent to soul and kind of soul awakening work. On this particular trip, this backcountry trip, I had something now I can call an ecological awakening. And, you know, despite decades hiking, camping, being in nature, for the first time in my life on that trip, I felt truly at home, like completely at home in the world. Like that I was part of something more than human, that I actually belonged here. And there's a lot of emotion with this because it was a really profound experience for me, to really feel like a sense of belonging beyond the human world, like to feel like this place that we are from, this place that I'm made up of, the minerals, the water, right, the matter, everything that exists. We are created of this world. Like literally every single part of our being comes from this world. I think a lot of people don't fully comprehend what that means. And so I started to feel this community that was beyond my culture, beyond my friends, my, religion or country or whatever, but that I actually am an extension of this dynamic, this thriving, this evolving, this breathing, this mystical and ancient being that is Earth. I just remember this moment at the end of that trip, sitting at the edge of this canyon, and I was watching the sunrise overlooking the magnificent red rocks, like just the gorgeous landscapes of southern Utah, and I just wept. I just wept. Because I knew that I would never be the same, and that I had to go back to a world that hadn't changed. And that may never change, at least not in my lifetime. And the tension and the pain of having to be so connected and so alive and so present, like so here, and have to get that, to rip that away and go back into this matrix, just shattered my heart. And I haven't been the same since then. Since that trip, that was a pivotal moment. And, now we're coming up on 2 years ago. 2 years ago this September, as of this recording, it's July 9th. And I haven't been the same since. And what I found is, as grateful as I was, I came back while I was gone. We had moved into a new place. I came back to this beautiful home on the ocean. The fridge was full of food, which was a miracle. A bed to sleep on was a miracle. Just a shelter to live in was a miracle after spending a month away. And I was so grateful for all the love and for the community and the people that I returned to. But with all that, with all the amenities and everything from regular life, that was beautiful to reintroduce, and that I was so grateful for. Obviously, anytime we take something away for an extended period of time, like a fridge or Amazon Prime or all the shit that, we take for granted every single day, taps that have water that come out of them that's clean, right? I was drinking dirty pool pond scum and treating it with chlorine for a month. As grateful as I was for all of that stuff, I also came back to a culture that was so devastatingly shallow. And so much of what I had spent years studying, where, in this world where it's all about depth and deep practice and going deep, that word thrown around constantly, like all of it kind of felt juvenile. And I'm not here to judge the power and the healing and the gifts those lineages and those teachers offered me, that offers thousands of people and still offer them to this day. Like, I'm so grateful for that trajectory. This isn't to make any of that wrong or to be in judgment of its efficacy or whether it changes lives or not. It's beautiful and profound work, and many of my friends lead that stuff, in the realms of embodiment and relationship and polarity and ontological coaching and everything that I'd studied up to that point. I had to go through that to get to this point. But what I realized was it was just incomplete. Right? It was missing so much of what the world really needs, truly needs. And you can feel, or perhaps you're watching this, you can see there's pain in that. There's pain in this incompleteness. And what I noticed, at its worst, so much of this quasi or pseudo spiritual work, at its worst, it's actually feeding into this egoic, this consumer-centric, this lifestyle, this individual, all about me. Look at me. Look what I can do. I'm a fucking pro. I'm going to take you here. I'm going to bring you to I can't even articulate it. This just incessant, egoic, consumeristic culture that just disgusts me. Even that was wrapped in all this work, right? It's wrapped in all this alleged liberation, this alleged deep, this alleged spiritual work. If it's not moving humanity away from this hyper individualistic, consumeristic way of walking through the world, it's not deep and it's not complete. So after getting home from that trip, I felt more alive, more awake, more attuned with the entire world, humanity, the non-human world, all of it, than I ever had in my life. And yet, given the work that I was doing, given my commitment to life and society, I had all these obligations. I had to step back into life's unfolding drama. I had to step back into the world of social media. I had to step back into the world of calendars and making money and all these things that are so good, important, and great. But what they cost me was that openness and that connection that I was feeling, that attunement, that aliveness, I began again to contract. And I found myself back in the game very quickly. Even though I had a steadfast commitment to changing the way that I walked through the world, to slowing down, I ended up just within a few weeks putting my head right back down, creating content, running men's groups, coaching clients, shopping at fluorescent lit grocery stores, avoiding things, watching movies, paying fucking bills, doing normal people stuff. And I was so restless and so unhappy through all of it. And it's like there was like this elastic band effect where, because I felt so deeply, to go back to that quote unquote normalcy was even more painful. It was even more grief ridden. It was even more confusing. And to cope, I started reverting back to like some really old habits that I used to use to distract myself. I started eating edibles again. I hadn't used cannabis regularly in years, and many years, almost 10 years. And so I bought a fucking PlayStation, and I started playing games again for the first time again in a decade. And I have compassion with myself, and I recognize now, like, man, it was an immense amount of pain and grief to be with, where I needed that level of distraction, because I didn't want to be with like what it meant to let go of, like, it's like once you cross a threshold, you can't go back. And so what does it require? What does the new life require? It means letting go of a lot of things, but instead I regressed, right? And I decided instead to put a ton of energy into building a social media presence, and I started creating content online every day. I started a newsletter. I launched more programs. I just like fully sent myself into my business, and like there was success. But throughout that success, I lived in this miserable tension. Like, so I was living these one foot in one world and one foot in the other. And this deep longing, this deep depression that's so often pathologized as something to fix and eradicate and manage in our life, got the best of me. And so I decided, like, okay, well, maybe I do need a therapist. Maybe I need to talk to somebody. So, I hired somebody, and I started meeting with her every week. And though there was a few sessions that felt respiteful, and I thought that I found a really, really high level modality and type of therapist, but I knew just within a few sessions that this therapist had no idea how to be with somebody going through what I was going through, because they're trained in traditional, even the most advanced cutting edge therapies, don't understand what it means to go through something called dissolution. And so eventually I realized that this wasn't serving me. She knew that it wasn't serving me. She was very happy to end our therapeutic relationship. And so I just continued to be in that struggle of feeling completely lost, of feeling like, wow, the world really doesn't understand me. Like, even the people closest to me, even my family, even my wife, like, whoa, she has no understanding, no context of like what is really happening. I felt like the entire world was like against me. I felt like I was going fucking crazy. And with all that, my life felt completely out of control, right? Like, usually my first 32, 33 years of my life, I've always landed on my feet. I could always figure it out, no matter how hard things got, no matter how precarious a situation felt, no matter how backed into a corner I was, I could figure it out. Like, if there's one thing that I could rely on, is my industriousness, is my resourcefulness. And it no longer worked. Like, that way of being, that strategy just stopped working. It was like the rug was just getting pulled out from every single domain in my life. Like, massive financial losses, like family members dying who I couldn't see because I've been stuck in this immigration hell in the US, and I haven't been able to go home and see my family in what's almost going to be 3 years now. It's like deep betrayals from people that were really close to me, absolute relationship chaos, getting targeted by like this online troll who tried to destroy my entire business, my marriage, my life. Just like every single fucking pillar, every corner of my life was being completely decimated. Like everything. There wasn't there. It was wild. And I had my health, right? And I was safe, and I had that. But like anything that I tried to put my fingers on, anything that I tried to touch, manage, and control was just completely blown up. And it was so fucking hard because still I was seeing people, seeing clients. Still I was teaching. Still I was running online programs. Still I was trying to make money, poorly at it too. Like things were just falling apart. Things weren't coming together. Clients weren't paying me. People were bailing on me. It was nonstop. Things were breaking down. Like physical things I owned are just breaking. I fucking drove over one of my guitars, right? Like I got stranded in my car a few times. Like just, it's like if you could imagine stacking up the dominoes or stacking, what's the Jenga, like the Jenga blocks of my life, and then just booting it from the bottom and it all collapsing. That was my life. And this isn't a woe is me story. I'm not a victim in this. It's just the reality of what was happening. Right. And so I was like, what the fuck? And my way of dealing with that was to waver between like extreme rage. Just like, that's where I go. That's a safe place for me, is just to be fucking mad because I couldn't control anything. Like I couldn't control any of the stuff happening to me. So I just rage and then go to devastation and utter grief. So just like so angry and then cry and then fucking be frustrated and then push people away and throughout all of this just like internal struggle, I was still trying to be somebody in the world, and at the same time I just didn't want to. Like everything just started feeling so contrived, and I just started to fucking hate my life. Like I just hated the situation I was in. Nothing was working at all. And yeah, I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know if there was anything I could do. I didn't even know how to not do anything. Because when you have a history of figuring everything out and it always working out for you and always being like, one of my teachers joked with me, I'm like the golden child. Like things, I just get what I want. Always. I've always gotten what I wanted. I always get the deal. I always get the one spot left. I always get there first. Like I get the special fucking prize. Like that's just the way it's gone. This isn't some arrogant thing. It's just like, I don't know. That's just how life set me up for whatever reason. Some maybe talent, maybe hard work, maybe just playing the politics, like, you know, whatever it was, but it just worked out. And it wasn't anymore. And not having that and not being in control was fucking infuriating. So a few years prior to all of this happening, a friend, kind of just in the beginning of when this things really started to unravel, just by chance, a friend recommended a book to me. It was called The Journey of Soul Initiation, and it's by a guy named Bill Plotkin. I actually might have it right here for those who watch. It's a pretty fantastic book. I've dog-eared it and highlighted it a bunch. This is Bill's latest book. But anyway, so he recommended this book, and I had ordered the book on his recommendation because I trusted him, and it's a pretty fucking big book, and it's like a whole cosmology. It's a whole layout of how we might go through initiations through life to become someone that really has a soul purpose and lives from that purpose, and all these stages of development just that humans go through. And so I flipped through it and I found some of the concepts interesting, but overall it felt just like something I was kind of reading about rather than relating to or actively experiencing. And ironically enough, this exact book, The Journey of Soul Initiation, we were allowed one book on our 28-day trip, and another guy on the trip brought this. What did I bring? Oh yeah, I brought a John Wineland book, of course. But no, it's a great book from the core. But he brought this book, and I just thought it was funny, and I took note of it, and I was like, oh yeah, I have that book on my shelf. Maybe I should look at it when I get home. But anyway, fast forward to this collapsing of my life, I picked this book up again, this Journey of Soul Initiation, or JOSI, as it's lovingly called acronymically as an acronym. I picked this book up again and I read it. And this time, fast forward, a year and a half later, it's like he was writing this book directly to me. It's like everything that I was experiencing, everything that nobody understood, everything that a therapist couldn't identify, everything that like my wife was terrified by, everything that I was internally experiencing, but also just how life was falling apart around me, how my 28-day survival trip hit me, like all of it started making sense in this book. And I realized, because I thought maybe like, oh man, now that I'm on my own, now that I'm actually seeing like some success, now that things are growing in my life, maybe I'm self-sabotaging. Like I was trying to flip up every rock to fucking figure out, maybe it's the relationship with my parents, maybe it's ancestral, maybe I need ayahuasca, maybe I need trauma therapy, maybe I need to fucking whatever, do this book, do that men's retreat, do that, like whatever it was. I was using all the fucking tools that I had, all my holding and all my healing tools, and none of them were working. And I realized after reading this book that this wasn't just some regressive trauma experience. Instead, what was happening was I was at the beginning stages of evolving, like from adolescence, from this, and I'm not talking adolescence from a chronological, like being an 18-year-old. I'm talking adolescence as a stage of development in my humanity, that I was evolving from adolescence into adulthood. And the only way that I could do this, according to Bill and the hundreds and hundreds and perhaps thousands of people that he's worked with to prove this concept, the only way that I could do this was to allow my entire life, my identity, everything that I've known to unravel. Because it was time for me to make my descent into the underworld, to the world of mystery and darkness. And in order to do that, I had to be stripped naked, spiritually naked, probably not physically naked, though at times I have done that since then in wild places, which has felt really good. But I needed to shed. I needed to shed this skin so I could become something different. And I could no longer like work life and manipulate life to get what I wanted. This is what I realized. I actually now needed to let life work me. I needed to become a hollow reed where life could fill me with some new song. And what I had realized in the last few years, like why, instead of being at the question of like, why is all this happening to me? Like, why is this so hard right now? Is that life was working me. Right? And those years of studying, of healing, of refining my gifts, of finding an alleged purpose, of building an identity wasn't to get to that. It was just the preparation for the beginning of my descent. You see, we get so, or at least what I've seen with so many people, especially men that I work with about this piece around purpose, is like they work so hard to build this identity in the world. That's only the beginning. And now that I look around to all these people that I know, I realize they're all adolescents. They worked really hard and they do magnificent and beautiful things in the world, but that's not the end. The years of training, the getting to the top of their field, being successful, making money, leaving an impact is not the end. It's the beginning, at least for someone who wants to live a true soul-led visionary life. And so this time, this potent time that I'm in right now, by the way, and if you can feel the emotion within me, it's because it's so potent. It's so real for me. And this was my time to become an apprentice at the Wellspring, right? And so we all have a unique delivery system for embodying our soul's destiny. And this is not another job or vocation or title. Right? Like this isn't like I was a men's work guy or whatever, or I was a coach and now I don't know, I do some sort of other job title that you could fucking see on LinkedIn, right? It's not like a transition from one job to the next. It's not a transition from one vocation or one industry or one fucking marketing tagline to the next. This is becoming what Bill might call a visionary change maker or an artisan of cultural renaissance. And so I read this book and I took it to heart, and it's filled with many beautiful stories of people who write in their own words in this book about some of the profound feelings and things and transitions that they'd been going for. And I was like, man, this book sees me. Like this book knows me. This book put a language to what was happening in my life. And so I knew I had to go deeper. I knew I had to go deeper down this path. And in addition to writing many books, and all the ones that I've read are great, Bill Plotkin, the writer of this book, Journey of Soul Initiation, he also has an organization. In fact, most of his energy, I imagine, is put into this organization called Animas Valley Institute. And what they do is they hold specific retreats, initiations, programs to guide through people through this process of soul initiation that's outlined in Bill's cosmology. And so upon seeing this, I signed up for the first one that was available. And that was just this past February. And I went out to Joshua Tree on something called the Soulcraft Intensive, which is kind of the beginning intensive, the kind of the 101 to Bill's work, to enacting Bill's work. And it was a really powerful weekend of ceremony, of wandering, of really letting life work me, or letting the mystery work me. And the mystery could be spirit, could be God, it could be the universe, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it mystery. But what I loved about this is this work is not about getting better. It's not about improving your life or getting more efficient or productive at doing the things that you already do, or helping you fit into our society better. It's about unraveling you. It's about helping you. It's about asking the right questions and allowing the questions to work you, to let your life kind of fall apart. Only so you can be initiated, so you can birth something new, so something new can be birthed through you, so you can actually start living a life of true authenticity, which has a massive cost, right? And so it was a weekend full of just diving into ceremony, into conversation with mystery itself, into conversation with the soul, to exploring the terrain of soul. And one of the cornerstones of the animus approach is working with dreams. And I've always dreamed, of course, like most of us, but I had never really taken my dreams seriously or paid much attention to them. And animus doesn't interpret your dreams. They don't have a big tomb that they open and say, well, you saw a bird and birds mean that this, none of that crap, right? So they have a very unique way of working with them, where they kind of walk you through the dream again in the day. Every morning you spend time working your dream, but really it's the dream that's working you. And you just slowly relive the dream as if you're in it again and narrate it, and someone kind of helps you do a little bit of sense making of kind of what might be happening, or some questions that you might want to ask related to the dream. And so I had this one dream in particular out there in Joshua Tree, and it was about day 3. And I was standing on this giant rocky outcropping overlooking the horizon. If you've never been to Joshua Tree, it's got these massive boulders everywhere, and then, this beautiful Southern California desert, right? And so I'm on one of these massive rocks in Joshua Tree. And the surface of the earth, it's expanded out in all directions. And I'm in this kind of alpaca poncho that I have, and I'm holding this medicine drum. And this is a real drum that I own, and a real poncho that I own, but I'm in the dream. And the surface of the earth in the dream wasn't the earth. It was actually a really tight skin of a drum. And so I'm standing there on this rocky outcropping with my drum, overlooking the drum of the world, you could call it. And as I'm standing there, this big, booming, ominous voice of a woman thunders through the sky. And all she says is, "This is serious. This is serious." And what I realized throughout that, who knows? That's the mystery, right? What is serious? My life, this journey, this unraveling? Who knows? But what I learned in starting to work with these dreams is that perhaps the messages we receive, first of all, we don't need to have an answer to them, but we actually have to maybe spend some time allowing these dreams to live us, to work us. But also that the messages that we receive in them may be more relevant, more truthful, more honest than any other thing, any other message we receive in our waking lives, because it's uninhibited, it's unfiltered. it doesn't need to make sense like things do in our normal waking consciousness. And so that was a really profound moment, and I'm still allowing that to work me. Like, this is serious, and this is serious. This life is serious. This work is serious. This initiation is serious. As jovially and like lighthearted I can hold some of this. This is serious work. And throughout that trip in Joshua Tree, I also started to finally accept the part of myself that felt lost. And one thing that I really valued and enjoyed and cherished about this community of fellow wanderers at this retreat, fellow practitioners, but we're kind of wanderers wandering the soul terrain, was that they accepted my lostness. Like, no one tried to coach me out of my lostness. No one tried to give me niceties. No one tried to fix it. Instead, especially these beautiful soul guides, these facilitators, they pushed me to embracing the lostness further, to maybe announcing to the world that I'm lost, to announcing to mystery to that I'm lost, and to allow myself to be fully consumed by just my not knowing. And in a world where like we're so quick to want to give answers and receive answers, and like the idea of not knowing something is so admonished, I don't know what the word is so negated, is so full of fear. Embracing my not knowing and my lostness fully was like a relief. And to the point that I actually took the name Lost for the rest of that intensive. So everybody addressed me as Lost. And even just saying that right now, I feel a little cringy because I've always been so opposed to taking on names, like other than my birth name. But again, this idea of not just saying I'm lost, but being lost fully, by embracing loss, by becoming lost, felt like another threshold in this unraveling, in this evolution. And honestly, being called lost felt much more true than the name I'd been carrying for 34 years prior to that. And so that experience in the desert, it began to unlock something, a part of me, finally, or a part of me that I had been feeling, maybe a part of me that wanted to be heard, that I now see I had been suppressing, I've been repressing, I've been denying for my whole life. And again, I'm entering territory that feels really vulnerable and maybe even cringy and awkward about speaking publicly around this podcast, partially because I don't really want to identify as another one of those people, but also because the expectations and the responsibility that it might carry in stepping into this part of my beingness. But I couldn't help, every time I went on one of these wanders alone out into the desert during our time in Joshua Tree, I couldn't help but hear songs. And like, I wasn't just hearing the songs of birds and animals. It was as if music was radiating from the earth itself. You know, these melodies would be weaving through the wind. It felt like there was like songs that wanted to vibrate me, that wanted to be sung through me, like I was this reed vibrating with the earth's music. And sharing this right now kind of makes me want to throw up, because it feels in conflict with this identity that I have of how I'm known in the world. I often get the feedback that I'm this kind of aggressive, no bullshit, warrior energy guy, sometimes intimidating, always direct, assertive, and that's a way that I've been for most of my life, and I had to be, because it kept me safe, it kept me alive, and it's also just got me a lot of good results. My bullheadedness, people even gave me the nickname years ago, Pitbull, right? So this is how I identified. This is how I saw myself. And this is honestly a part of myself that I loved. And here I am in the desert singing the songs of plants and lizards and rocks and fucking full hippie mode. And just sharing that feels vulnerable as fuck. It feels like, especially after what I've been through in the last year, that I'm just opening myself to get absolutely destroyed, roasted, attacked, taken down just by people's ideas and projections, and how unmanly, quote unquote, that feels, which is just my own fucking internal misogyny, my own part of myself that hates the part of myself that, is allured and even in touch with some of what we might know as more feminine gifts of receiving, of channeling, perhaps even, or the song and dance and movement as a way of communing and interacting and with the earth and ourselves and others. But here we are, and here I am unraveling my former identity, and so this is part of that. And so for the rest of the retreat, like, I began to wander the desert with this big medicine drum, and I would play it in the desert and I would sing, and the thing is like, none of it felt contrived. None of it felt like I was trying. In fact, it felt really good. Again, it was reminiscent of those times on that 28-day trip where I just felt at home. Like, it felt like not only did it feel good for me, but it just felt like what I was supposed to be doing. And at the end of the retreat, we were invited to perform and give an offering kind of to mystery in front of everyone, right? And so I sang a song that had been coming through me all week, and it was terrifying and highly vulnerable to expose this very, very personal relationship that I was so new and just beginning to cultivate with the world at large, and to sing to the world at large in front of people. But later, I think it was the next morning, one of the guides approached me and he mentioned that my performance was like hair raising, and it gave him chills. And this isn't like a one-up or like, hey, look, I did the thing that opened people and activated them or caused some sort of result that I wanted, but perhaps it just felt like a confirmation that maybe whatever was coming through me might have some substance. It might be more than just me chasing my tail. And so before I left that desert experience, and much more transpired there, but I'll leave it at that. Before I left, I made a vow to continue to open myself to the music of the Muse, the music of mystery, the music of life that wants to move through me, and to continue to allow myself to be opened through song and through movement. And after I got home, I started a mentorship one-on-one with one of those Soulcraft guides, and then I immediately signed up for another retreat. And this one, another Soulcraft retreat, an advanced version, and this one was with Bill Plotkin himself. And again, I went up to Washington, and I found myself again in wild places, and again awakening these aspects of myself that I realized now I had spent a lifetime repressing and suppressing. And this is the piece around that I'm really understanding. As a man that's committed to helping other men and working with men, there's these ideas of masculinity, even in the most deep and sacred ways, which I believe that my organization and the way that I learned holds this, that are just so fucking contrived. And it's like a performance. And so many men, I understand now, are allured by this work, by the work of serving other men, of working on what I might call masculine embodiment or masculine energetics, or the polarity kind of realm, because it's actually their feminine that's deeply wounded and repressed. And one of my mentors and good friends of mine, Robert Glover, talks about this idea of our internal misogyny and the part of us that hates our own feminine, and the danger of some of this work. And I certainly think the organization that I run, 13 Pines with my friends, and the work that I do doesn't do this. But I could see how in the greater world, the danger is in wanting to be a better man. You further heighten this part of you that's an internal misogynist, that's like trying to differentiate all the time whether something's masculine or feminine or any of that kind of stuff, rather than just human. And so I know that I'd been doing that in my own life, and I had really good reasons to kind of tone those parts down in me. I was beaten and bullied and hurt and made fun of and mocked and spit on by family for any part of me that showed any type of feminine qualities for many years in my life. My sensitivity was kind of hit out of me, or mocked out of me, or beaten out of me, and repressed, and it never went anywhere. But what it required is that I became very defensive, very aggressive, and there is no opportunity for me to be truly vulnerable And that's something I'm still unwinding. For certainly in the last 5 years, I've gotten much better at it. But man, that is a lifetime of work. I can feel it right now as I talk about it in my solar plexus. Cause a lot of tension, a lot of destruction in friendships and in relationships in my life. And so thank you for everyone that contributed to that, that need to repress any part of my quote unquote feminine qualities. And I just notice it everywhere, kind of all over the place in the kind of masculine conversation today. So anyway, so I went on this retreat with Bill, and again, here I am wandering and singing, this time in the foothills of the North Cascade Mountains in Washington, kind of outside of a town called Twisp. And it was here, this is going to sound even fucking crazier, so if you're still with me listening to this, cool. I guess you have some level of respect for me, but it was here at this retreat that I began an apprenticeship with an animal. I started apprenticing with snake. And, I've always had this fascination with cold-blooded creatures. I've always loved reptiles and snakes. I have multiple snakes tattooed all over my body. I've always seen lizards as these kind of signposts that I'm on the right path. And I see them a lot, and so anytime I see a lizard, I'll oftentimes be wondering, is this what I should be doing right now, or am I going the right way on this hike, or how the fuck did I end up here? And then a lizard will crawl out of some crevice or crack, or crawl on the path, and I'll be like, cool, you're a confirmation. And whether that's total bullshit or not, I don't know, but it seems to give me some peace of mind. So on this trip up in the Cascades, I ended up having more interactions with snakes in the 5 days I was there than probably in my entire life. And multiple times I would go down, we get an assignment to go wander and sit down or find a particular spot that calls to us. And I would see it from far away and feel the call. And when I would arrive at this spot, there would just be a snake there, coiled up. One night when I was eating dinner, a snake just slithered up within a few feet from me on the rocks, kind of out of the garden. So snake became this threshold, this part of my experience there. And again, working with the dreams, I had this dream one night there. I was standing in this adobe kind of style house. It felt like we were in Mexico or somewhere in the desert, sand floors, and it was pitch black in the dream. And again, I was holding this drum, just like when I was on the rocks in Joshua Tree. I was holding this big medicine drum, my medicine drum. And I began to beat it in this dream. I began to beat it furiously. Boom, 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 boom. And after a few minutes, I heard this blood-curdling scream of a man. And suddenly the room was illuminated by flashlights. And I looked down, and there's hundreds of snakes slithering and covering the floor, all different types and colors, red and black and striped and coral and cottonmouths and everything. There's just hundreds of snakes on snakes on snakes. And the scream came from a man who had been bitten. The scream came from a man who had been bitten in the neck. And it was by what I understood to be a particularly poisonous snake, and he ended up dying. And as he dies here, other people start yelling at me, how could you be so irresponsible? Because it was me, through the drum, who conjured these snakes into this place. And it was me who was responsible, allegedly, for how these snakes killed this man and hurt people. And so the next morning, I was able to sit with Bill himself, Bill Plotkin, and work the dream with him. And it became clear to me at that point, if it wasn't already clear in this week, that snakes were here for me to work with. And again, the way these dreams and the way that we approach mystery and the way we approach this work, at least from my understanding, or let me speak for myself, the way that I'm approaching this work is that there's not necessarily an answer. You don't have a dream of snake and then go find a snake and buy a snake or fucking pet the snake or whatever, play flute for the snake. There isn't an answer. There isn't something that you do, but it's to rather live the question. And the question that I'm living is, what does snake mean? Not necessarily in our waking conscious life, but what does snake mean in the underworld? And oddly enough, there was a guide, an apprentice guide on the trip who goes by snake. And one thing that she mentioned to me was how snakes are some of the most misunderstood creatures on the planet, right? Highly feared, often despised culturally, cross-culturally, pan-culturally, and misinterpreted. And I recognized that, like, man, that's how I felt my entire life. Misunderstood. Despite good intentions, despite my efforts, I've always felt like people just don't see the goodness of my heart. They don't see my intentions. They only kind of feel my fangs. They're just afraid of my venom. So that trip ended about a month ago. And again, just so many experiences, dreams, conversations. And what I've really left that last Soulcraft, that advanced Soulcraft trip with, was just this, it's just begun to really reorient my entire approach to life. And in particular, like the work that I'm doing in the world, like the work that I'm offering, the way that I'm helping people. You know, in a few weeks after that most recent retreat, I actually had a conversation with one of the Soulcraft apprentices, Snake, and she mentioned, like, hey, I looked at your online presence, I watched a few of your videos, and I was really surprised between the disparity of who I met at the retreat and your persona in the world. So she was like kind of reluctant to share some of this stuff with me, but I egged her on, like, come on, just give it to me straight. Like, what do you see? What's the discrepancy? And she called my work, like my content, my videos, whatever, Instagram, I don't know, writing, perhaps, I don't know, every single thing she looked at, but she basically said, you know, it's just really elementary, and that she saw more depth in me in person at that retreat than what I was sharing in the world. And although this was kind of a stab to my ego, maybe slightly, I'm really grateful for it, because she was absolutely correct. All right. And I felt compelled to continue to create work in the world. I felt compelled because I needed to. I felt like it was something that part of my job was to just have a presence and to be a creator. Yet everything I was creating, like, none of it actually resonated with me. Like, I was teaching what I knew, but none of it, and it resonated with other people, and some of it even did pretty decently. Like, some of my content had millions and millions of views on Instagram, and, you know, amassed a bunch of followers and all that kind of crap. But I actually was pretty dissatisfied with all of it. And I think that's good. I think every few years we should look back at our work and kind of cringe. Like, I think I should cringe about the person I was a year ago. I think everybody should do that. If you're not doing that, I don't think you're growing, right? But it was like I had this message that I had deep in my soul, and I could just not get it out. And everything felt kind of juvenile, and everything kind of felt unimportant about what I was creating. And then I started looking at what my other friends were talking about and what they were teaching, what they were creating, and the messaging that they were putting in the world. And I was like, man, this feels fucking juvenile as well. You know, even the people that are seen as super deep and powerful and have big impacts in the world, like, it just felt like child's play. And that's my judgment, right? And I have to be careful, because I am a judgment. Like, I love to fucking judge people. I'm a judgmental motherfucker. I know that about myself, but all of it just felt kind of pointless. So within the last, like, 3 weeks or so, I've just started deleting almost all of my content. Like, my writings, images, stories, videos, all these things that I spent hundreds of hours working on are going in the trash. Just because they don't really represent who I am at this point in my life. You know, the way that I speak, the way that I coach, the way that I lead and facilitate, all of that is beginning to kind of dissolve. And part of that is because it's just felt adolescent, and a lot of it was heavily distorted based on where I came from and what I learned from other people, and how it got filtered through my own contexts and my own ways of seeing it in the world, and that a lot of it just lacks nuance, lacks true depth. And like I said, I think this is a natural progression. I actually find it quite scary or untrustable when people have a stance or an opinion or a strategy that applies for years and decades. It's just indicative of someone who is stunted in their growth, right? And that's the thing, is like, as we evolve and go into adulthood, from my understanding, is that life becomes more nuanced. Like, taking a strong stand against anything is the territory of the adolescent, and the adult is the one who holds nuance. But nuance doesn't do well in our internet culture, and so I have to be prepared now that anything I create going forward is largely going to fall on deaf ears. And one of the things I really appreciated that was shared at that Advanced Soulcraft retreat was this idea of the rule of threes. And you can equate it to the work that you do in the world. Or the thirds rule, or I can't remember exactly what they called it, but basically it's for anything that you create in the world, a third of people will hate you, a third of people will love you, and a third of people will have no idea that you're even doing anything at all. So if you made it this far in the podcast, I hope and I imagine that you're one of the 33% that loves me. And if you do, go leave me a review. Appreciate you. No, but seriously, leave me a fucking review. No, I'm kidding. But, you could be here making it this far to store ammunition to try to discredit me or make fun of me or whatever like that. And that's just going to be the nature of, dude, my work's about to get so much fucking weirder and more nuanced and more strange and less answer oriented. And so I'm here for it. I'm probably going to get a lot of, there's going to be, I'm no stranger to conflict and no stranger to people trying to tear me down. It's been kind of my whole life. But I'm preparing for more of it, I suppose, as my work gets more real, more authentic. What does this all mean? What does it all mean for the future of my work and for my offerings? For everything that I do in the world, if I'm in this kind of chrysalis stage? Well, that's to be determined. What I know now, well, the only thing I can hold on to is continuing to unravel, continuing to pursue the muse, pursue the mystery, and let life work me. And I'm in this process of deep personal upheaval. And so what is that looking like lately? Well, it means completely, like I said, deleting a lot of content. I'm in the process of getting rid of everything superfluous in my life, everything that I don't need in my life, and just minimizing to the bare necessities. I'm actually getting rid of this office. I'm selling off a lot of equipment, a lot of stuff. I'm not a huge into owning a bunch of stuff. I don't like having a big life full of items, but I've noticed over the last couple of years, I've ended up acquiring a lot more things than I need. So minimizing in order to make space to really go on this journey, to really let things fall apart. I'm planning on doing a year-long program with Animus Valley, which would require or include 4 retreats, one of which is a 4-day vision fast. And that'll just help me continue pulling this thread and getting supported as I go on this journey. Now, I'm not guaranteed that I'm going to do that program. It's application, and I've applied, so we'll find out. Continuing to do my practices to keep myself grounded, which lately has looked like Qigong under the Lotus Negong tradition, or at least school with Damo Mitchell, who I just got off a 10-day retreat with, which I didn't even get to in this podcast, but was a life-changing experience. And redoing my website, changing all my messaging, changing my writing, just really thinking, right? Really thinking about what the fuck I'm creating, bringing more guests on this podcast. I talked for a while on this podcast about only doing things in person. I might double back on that again. This is the nature of evolving. Like I feel like our businesses or offerings in the world should evolve with us. So I really want to get back to the subject matter of why I created this podcast, which is to learn how to undomesticate, which is why I named it Undomesticate. And then I ended up just interviewing a lot of good dudes and a lot of great episodes and stuff, but just kind of people in my circle. But I'm really wanting to venture out and make it a more regular thing to have conversations with real change makers, with people that are really up to things that are truly impacting the future of humanity, of the world, and just kind of following my muse and my interests, which is something I've always done. But of course, I'm still going to be offering what I do. I still have to do the survival dance, and I still believe in a lot of the work that I do. So of course, if you're looking for support, if you're going through something similar or just want support in general in a one-on-one mentorship container, I'm still offering one-on-one mentorship. I've got a few spots for that. But I am abandoning this idea of primarily working with men and being a men's coach, quote unquote, in my personal business. And so if there's women out there listening to this, I don't know how many of there are of you, but I'm opening up to working with all people, from all walks of life. And of course, I'll still continue working with Per 13 Pines. That's our organization that does develop masculine leadership. We got a new program launching in September. You can go to 13pines.com and learn more about that if you want to learn how to lead powerfully. And I'm not naysaying any of that. In fact, I'm happy that I'm on this path of unraveling, because it's going to allow me to offer more nuance and more depth from everything that I'm learning on my own personal descent to soul, hopefully to the men in these containers, and hopefully inject these containers with something that I see is sorely missing. More of this mytho-poetic. It used to be big in the 80s and stuff like that, but really like seeing the poetry of our life, seeing the more truly feminine aspects of our nature that, like I said, again, is there's this weird misogynistic view that exists within men's work, even in the most quote-unquote conscious men's work, of what the feminine, what the masculine are, and as if these are two separate things, and just kind of more of a weaving of the magic of life together, and celebrating not masculine and feminine and all that crap, but our humanity. And so I really want to inject that more into the spaces that I enter when working with men. And it's something that nobody is really doing right now that I can see, at least that I know of personally. I'm sure there are men doing adjacent work, but yeah, and we'll see. 2-3 years from now, I could be doing something totally different, but that's the beauty of being a human. And I appreciate all of you who made it this far listening, and I'm looking forward to hearing about how this episode landed for you, if you made it this far, and what you're taking away from it. So let me know. Shoot me an email, evan@evanmeyer.co. Jump on my website, check me out on social media, though half my content will be deleted, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing where this journey takes me and what comes with it. Thanks again for being on this journey with me, and just for listening, and for all the people that have supported me, that have worked with me over the years. And as my work continues to deepen, I hope to see many new faces and many old ones as well. So thanks for being here. Love y'all. Take care and have a great day. Ciao.